Hello everyone, now we are going to multiply and divide integers. What's an integer again? It is a positive or a negative whole number. Alright, so let's start off with multiplying sine numbers. So when your signs are the same, so if you have a positive, there we go, positive times a positive, your answer is positive. When you have a negative times a negative, your answer is positive. So when signs are the same, your answer will always be positive. When you have a positive times a negative, your answer is a negative. When you have a negative times a positive, your answer is also negative. So when your signs are different, your answer is always negative. Let's just run through some examples here. We're going to multiply on part A, negative 9 times 3. We have a negative times a positive, so our answer will be negative, and then just multiply 9 times 3, and you get 27. On part B, negative 2 times negative 5. Negative times a negative is positive. 2 times 5 is 10. 4 times negative 8, that's a positive times a negative, so our answer is negative. 4 times 8 is 32. On part D, 7 times 6, that's a positive times a positive. Just multiply 7 times 6. There you go. Alright, so now we're going to multiply negative 1 times 7. Negative 1 times 7, positive 7, negative times a positive is negative. 1 times 7 is 7. On part B, negative 1 times negative 11. Negative times a negative is a positive. 1 times 11 is 11. Alright, so now we're going to add in division. And guess what? The rules are the exact same as they are for multiplication. When you divide and the signs are the same, your answer is positive. When you divide two numbers and their signs are different, the answer will be negative every single time. Alright, so on part A, we're going to divide negative 27 by 3. Negative divided by a positive is a negative. 27 divided by 3 is 9. On part B, negative 100 divided by negative 4. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. 100 divided by 4 is 25. Alright, on this problem right here, we need to make sure that we follow the order of operations. And in this problem, we have multiplication right here, we have addition right there, multiplication right here, and then we're subtracting right there. So we're going to do the multiplications first, and we can actually do those in the same turn since they don't overlap. So in the first one, I've got 7 times negative 2. So positive times a negative is a negative. 7 times 2 is 14. I'm going to bring this plus sign straight down. 4 times negative 7, that's a positive times a negative, and I get negative 28 minus 6. Now, the operations that I have left are addition and subtraction, and you do those in order from left to right. So negative 14 plus negative 28, signs are the same, so you add those numbers together and you keep that sign, which is what, negative 42? And remember how before I told you that we can turn all subtraction problems into addition problems by doing change, change? Now we're adding two numbers together that have the same sign, so you keep that sign and your answer becomes negative 48. On this page, this is one of those major ideas in math that mess people up for whatever reason. So on part A, what I want you to realize with this is that part A, because the negative is inside the parentheses, that means we are taking negative 2 times itself 4 times. So our answer here would be negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. Positive 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 times negative 2 is positive 16. So when you have an even number, of negative signs and they're multiplying, your answer will be positive. Part B is a little bit different. You're going to get a totally different answer here. So because that negative sign is not inside the parentheses, here's what this means. Negative, it's going to hang around out front, and only the 2 gets raised to the 4th power, not the negative sign this time. So notice how I only have one negative sign. So this answer will actually be negative 16. All right, on this problem, again, we're going to follow order of operations. We always follow order of operations. So I want to do what's inside the parentheses first. So I've got 12 minus 3, and what goes inside the parentheses now is 9 minus 12, which is negative 3. So now I'm going to multiply this together. So I've got 12 minus 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. Notice how you have a double negative here. So now we're going to add 12 and 9 together, and you get 21. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. Remember your order of operations say, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So the P stands for grouping symbols. Now, in this case, I want you to take a look at what's inside your grouping symbols. Notice how there is no operation inside these grouping symbols. Well, I mean, you could argue that this one on the right, hang on, let me do the pointer thing. This one over here wants you to raise it to a power. So, yeah, okay, so we're going to raise that to a power, but notice that there are no add, subtract, multiply, or divide inside the grouping symbols. So in this case, these grouping symbols, they stand for multiplication. Okay, and remember, multiplication and division comes towards the end before addition and subtraction. So in this case, yes, I could do this and this all in the same step. It won't hurt anything because they don't overlap. But in all actuality, you should do this one first because it has exponents. All right. Again, it doesn't hurt to do these in the same step because they do not overlap. So we can go ahead and multiply 8 times negative 9, which is negative 72. Negative 2 raised to the 3rd power. Off to the side, I'm going to do negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2, which is negative 8. So negative 72 divided by negative 8. Now, in a textbook, you really wouldn't see it written like this. You would see it written like that because it's really not proper form to have two symbols touching each other like that, the divide and the negative. So it just looks a little bit cleaner to have the second term in parentheses. Just makes it look a little bit neater. All right, so now we're going to do negative 72 divided by negative 8. A negative divided by a negative is a positive, and you get an answer of 9. We're getting lots of practice with order of operations here. So now here's what we've got in this problem. We've got negative 30 divided by negative 2. We have addition right there, and then we've got a negative 3 times a negative 7. And notice how those two underlines don't overlap each other. So I can do those in the same step. Negative 30 divided by 2, negative divided by a positive is a negative. Bringing this plus straight down. Negative 3 times negative 7, a negative times a negative is a positive. 3 times 7 is 21. Now I'm going to add these guys together. A negative plus a positive, you subtract the numbers, the smaller from the larger, but you keep the sign of the larger number. So this is positive 6. So now we're going to evaluate expressions. And in order to evaluate an expression, that means that you substitute a number for the variable in the expression. And now we can use negative numbers as well as positive numbers. So I'm going to substitute negative 5 in where I see n in both of these problems. So on part A, I've got negative 5 plus 1. Negative 5 plus 1 is negative 4. On part B, notice how I have a negative sign right here. This is something that people mess up all the time because you're substituting in a negative number, but you also have a negative in front of the variable. So don't forget that you have two negative signs there. So really it should look like this, negative, negative 5 plus 1. Now you've got a negative times a negative right there. That creates a positive. 5 plus 1 is 6. So you have negative 4 for this one, but you have 6 for the bottom one. And it's all because of that right there. Okay, on this problem, we're going to evaluate the quantity or the sum of x plus y to the second power. And so now we've got x is equal to negative 18, y is equal to 24. So I'm going to substitute those values in. Now, I want to do what's inside the parentheses first. Negative 18 plus 24 is 6. And then I want 6 raised to the second power, which is 36. All right, on this problem, I'm going to evaluate 20 minus z when z is positive 12, and then I'm going to evaluate it when z is negative 12. So on part A, I've got 20 minus 12. 20 minus 12 is 8. There's my answer. Now on the bottom one, on part B, I've got 20 minus negative 12. Notice how that changes the problem quite a bit. Change, change, add those together. I get 32 now. So those minus signs make all the difference in the world. You cannot ignore them. All right, on this problem, we're going to substitute 4 in everywhere we see x. So I've got 2 times 4 squared plus 3 times 4 plus 8. So on this problem, I would do this right here first. So I've got 2 times 16, that's what 4 squared is. And I can go ahead and do 3 times 4 here. It's not going to hurt anything because they don't overlap. Now I'm going to do 2 times 16, which is 32. And I'm going to add from left to right. 32 plus 12 is 44. 44 plus 8 is 52. All right, on this one, the sum of 8 and negative 12, we're going to translate that. Oh, and then it says it's increased by 3. We're going to translate that, and we're going to simplify. So the sum of 8 and 12 implies that we have that in parentheses. So it should look like that. Then it says it's increased by 3. It doesn't really change the answer having those parentheses in there, but it does actually say what this statement says whenever I translate it into algebra by having that there. We find the sum of those numbers first, and then we increase that by 3. So 8 plus negative 12 is negative 4, plus 3 is negative 1. I threw this page in here because it's super important that you realize that this statement right here can be written in these 4 ways and be absolutely correct. Notice how in the first way, A minus B, it's written in the exact same order that you read it. The second way, this one is also written A first and then B. But notice these bottom two. These you have to be super careful with because you have to reverse the order. B subtracted from A is this right here. So you have to reverse the order from the way you read it in the English statement. B less than A also reverses the order. So subtracted from and less than reverses the order. And you just have to be really careful. And honestly, this is just something you're going to have to practice. All right, so we're going to translate and then simplify on these. The difference of 13 and negative 21. So this one is not one that you reverse the order. So I have 13 minus negative 21. Notice how you have a double negative. So I get 44. What am I saying? Sorry. 34. Isn't that a better number? All right. Sorry, I lost my head for a second. Okay, the bottom one, subtract 24 from 19. Now be careful, this is one we have to change the order on. Negative 19 minus 24. And you can do a change here if you want. Change. So they're both negatives. Add those numbers together and keep that sign. So this would be what? Negative 43? We're going to translate to an algebraic expression and simplify if possible. The product of negative 2 and 14. Remember, product is a fancy word for multiply. So I've got negative 2 times 14. I have a negative times a positive, which is a negative 28. Translate to an algebraic expression and simplify again. The quotient of negative 56 and negative 7. Quotient is a fancy word for divide. Negative 56 divided by negative 7. Negative divided by negative is positive, and this answer is 8. Okay, so I'm going to let you read through this page. You might want to hit pause here and just read through. Word problems are just something that kicks everybody's rear at first. So they just take a lot of practice. And there's nothing wrong with missing them at first. That's why I always tell you guys to look at your answer keys and make sure that you actually have the answer to what the key says. And if you don't, you should ask somebody or ask me. But just understand that the worst thing you can do is just not try. So just try. With every word problem, do your best. All right, so on this one it says the temperature in Urbana, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering that city name, Illinois, one morning was 11 degrees. By mid-afternoon, the temperature had dropped to negative 9 degrees. What was the difference of the morning and the afternoon temperature? This tells you what you're supposed to do. Difference is a fancy word for subtraction. So I want the difference of 11 and negative 9. So 11 minus negative 9. Notice how you have a double negative there. So you want to change. And 11 plus 9 is 20. And in this case, we're dealing with degrees. So the difference of the morning and the afternoon temperatures was 20 degrees. All right, so that's it for this lesson. Do your homework, ask questions, be curious. If you have any issues with anything, talk to me, let me know, and we'll work through it together.